recording later. I was recording with my friend the other day, and she was actually in studio with us, and so we had two different microphones, but they were both feeding into our camera. And my computer didn't like it. The audio wound up being completely jacked, and we talked for like an hour and 20, hour and 40 minutes. And none of it was usable. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Oh my God. So yeah. All right. So this is the first session of what we're going to call the powder room, which I think is pretty genius. It's a live guided discussion with another armed female patriot in which we invite our members to join via the audience, which is a bit different than our tactical talks because it's more interactive. And so as you're coming in, say hello, start talking to us, start interacting. Um, from the onboarding survey, if you took that, it turns out like 99% of women who join WGOAA do so because they want to meet other like-minded women. And I totally get that. I want to do that too. So this is the perfect place to get that started. I'm also very open to feedback. And so if you would like to see a change in how this is offered, then you need to just let me know. You can just send an email to admin@wagoa.org and let me know how you feel about it. Or you can use the chat and let me know. The other thing is that if you would like to be even more interactive, so where you see everyone's face on the screen, we can do that too. Just also after the tactical talk, the surveys that we sent out after the tactical talks, most women just want to communicate via the chat. And so that's the way that we are doing this to begin with. But if you would like to do more, let us know. We're going to be talking about how your physical wellness directly impacts your ability to fight, escape, to think clearly, and ultimately to stay free. And I mean, you carry a gun to protect yourself, but is your body ready to help you when you need it most to avoid ever having to need to use your gun? Like literally, can you run away? Can you climb that fence? If you're sick, you're kind of out for the count, right? And so, how do we take care of our bodies to stack the cards in our favor? For me, I'm a total gym rat. And so I'm excited about this conversation. I love this stuff. And I've been in love with lifting and pushing my body to its limits since I was a teenager. And I started off with triathlons, which now that I think about it, I don't know why I did that because that's just awful. I think I just didn't have any training. And so I was like, well, I can run. And so I just did that. And, I enjoyed it a lot at the time. And now I don't want to ever do that again. But then I got into some strength training and some lifting. Thank you, Crazy X. And, kind of never looked back after that point. But eventually I went in to compete in bikini and figure competitions in 2016 and 2017. And, I'm constantly astounded by the capabilities of the human body and how we're able to push ourselves further than we ever thought possible. I wound up getting my bachelor's in kinesiology from Western Washington University back in 2010, which just feels like another lifetime ago. But that led me down the path of personal training, in which I worked for some actual big box fitness gyms and then started my own gig. But eventually that wound up not being the path I took. I wound up becoming 911 dispatcher, and you guys kind of know the rest. And so I'm excited to learn from Monica today because she brings a wealth of information and experience, both in law enforcement as well as wellness. And so I can't wait to see what she has in store for us. She kind of had to make her great escape, I'll call it, from actual law enforcement. And there's a great reason for that. And so, Monica, do you want to just start by telling us a little bit about your background and how we wound up here?
Yeah, so my name is Monica Crawford, former law enforcement officer. I did that for 8 years. Also former NCAA Division I gymnast. So there's the fitness background, if you will. Gosh, where do I start? I was in law enforcement for 8 years. For about, I think it was at 6-ish years is when I decided to transition out. I found myself inside of a toxic work environment inside of the agency that I was with. It got to a point where I realized my mental and physical health was declining pretty rapidly, and I knew I had to make a change. And that was in 2022. Earlier that same year, I had seen a Facebook ad for a business coach and realized that I had more background in nutrition and fitness up until that point, even more so than I did in my professional career. I have a master's in criminal justice, and I had even had more experience in the fitness realm than even just in my professional career under the criminal justice hub, because I had other positions before being in law enforcement. And I was like, this could be a thing. Like, I could coach people. I'm a certified nutrition coach. I've been doing CrossFit for many years. I'm past my 10, 11, 12-year mark at this point on the CrossFit side. And my husband, fiance at the time, was like, yeah, I think you could do this. And so I was like, well, at the very least, it's a side hustle. It's some extra cash once I get it rolling in. And then it got to the point where I needed to jump. Like I really needed to get out because nothing else was lining up. I was severely struggling. I had applied to a bunch of other positions still under the criminal justice and law enforcement umbrella. And it just wasn't lining up. Like I got to the end of a position that was going to be an instructor for a criminal justice type class that was at a VOTEC. And I was like, this is cool. You know, it's something completely different. Still serving law enforcement. But I got to the end where it was the final two and they chose the other person. And you're like, well, what do you do? Like, it's nothing against me. That's just who they chose.
Right.
So it was at that time where I was like, I got to figure this out. Like, I'm either going to jump and go full time with this, or I'm in limbo for even longer. And at that point, I was just in a really bad place. I made the jump. I went full time with 50 Fierce and Fit, which is my online nutrition, fitness, and leadership coaching program for women in male-driven fields. Been doing that full time since April 2022, and the way things lined up, I think God helped me out with this one. But the week that I left, my income passed full time of what it was with the police department.
Wow.
So I was able to step right into my coaching position and was making full time income.
Amazing. It was meant to be.
Yeah.
That's some good support too. You must have really rallied people around you. That's awesome. Or your marketing is just incredible.
It aligned, man. I mean, I was brand new in business, literally been working 3.5 months, burning the candle at both ends, working a 40-hour work week. And then every time I was off, I was sitting at my dining room table with my Chromebook. Like, you want to talk about humble beginnings of trying to get this thing off the ground. And it just, it lined up right when I needed it to.
Awesome. Very cool. And so, yeah, tell me a little bit about your business. Do you do fitness and nutrition? Anything else that you offer, and is this all virtual, or how do you strategize it?
So my core program, what I began 50 Fierce and Fit on, it's a 6-month online nutrition and fitness program. I have the leadership aspect in there as well, because when we do check-ins, either through virtually or virtually, I say like through True Coach, the platform, or through Zoom, there's a lot of that other lifestyle coaching and mentoring that goes on during that. And I found that's the stuff that's like harder to explain. You don't know until you're in it, because it's kind of like I give you what I need because I feed off of what it is I feel like you're struggling with, and then I can fill in that gap for you. Mm-hmm. So nutrition, fitness, and leadership coaching. The nutrition coaching is all the food side of stuff, helping you figure out how much to eat, what foods to eat, how much to eat, how to make it fit for your lifestyle. And that goes with meal prep ideas and snack ideas and things like that, making it make sense so that you start feeling better, your energy improves, your mental clarity improves, you're not sluggish anymore. You start getting those small wins, and then eventually you start seeing the physical wins of things getting smaller, shrinking a little bit. Or for some people who are looking to gain some muscle and strength, they see more muscle definition too. Nice. The fitness side is fitness programming. It's what you do in the gym, or even outside the gym. It depends on what you need. As far as, we could do at home programs with minimal equipment, we can do full-blown programs in the gym. Depends on what you have access to, what you have time for, those types of things. And then the leadership and the mindset coaching is during the check-ins that we do at least once a week, where I can check in with you, see how things are going. We dive into sleep, we dive into self-care, we dive into setting boundaries, we dive into time management, a lot of those other added things that are more behind the scenes, that are the smaller building blocks for the bigger things.
Right. And you say leadership. I imagine that could be useful for anyone. You know, stay-at-home mom could do well with learning more about leadership, right? From what I'm understanding with the way you're describing it, seems like everybody could really benefit from that.
Yeah, so I base it off of 3 pillars, and I've been leaning into this is where I've been shifting my business lately. It aligns with my book that I wrote, Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line. I have the podcast, which is Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line podcast, and now my coaching program. And it's these 3 things. It's one, we rise by lifting others, but first we must lift ourselves. You have to take accountability for you. It's cliche to say this, but it's true. You can't pour from an empty cup. So if you want to be there to support other people, you can't do it running on empty. And more often than not, especially women, we love to run on empty. and
Yeah.
say, hey, I got 3 hours of sleep, but I got the kids everywhere they needed to be. Oh, and I think I'm stumbled through work today and did all right and was dragging ass all day. But hey, I'm back to bed and we're going to get up and we're going to do it every day until I die.
Right.
And I'm like, oh boy, we need to feel some like joy and some fulfillment in there and like something else to live for other than running your ass ragged and being behind the 8 ball 24/7.
Totally. Yeah.
The second one is you're one decision away from a totally different life. It's true. It's manifested in my life. I've seen it manifested in many other people's lives. You have more control than you think you do, especially in law enforcement, especially when you're like, oh, like, well, I can't do X because this person's an asshole. And I can't do Y because, fill in the gap. We don't realize that our success is an internal job. And we
Absolutely.
forget that it's so external when you get into the world of law enforcement and the blinders come on and you're like, well, I'm stuck. I've got this pay grade. I've got X years until I retire. My pension's going to be this. And if I move, then I'm going to lose all that and fill in the blank. And if I piss this person off, and then I'm going to have a target on my back. And it's all of these, it's a slippery slope that just gets more slippery, like the further you go down.
Yeah.
So reminding yourself that it's one decision. Like if you say it stops today, it stops today. And then you have to figure out what happens next after that.
Yeah.
But it's all based on defining what it means to you to thrive inside the thin blue line, which I use thin blue line because that's where I came from. That's my background. That's law enforcement. But really, it's more of an analogy of what does it mean to you to thrive in your own life and your career? What are your dreams? What are your why? What are the things that you're like, yeah, at one point I wanted this, but life happened and now we're here. Okay, like, let's remember what that is. Do we still want that? If that's yes, let's figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because once you can start looking for opportunities, you're going to find more opportunities.
I agree. Was there another one?
No, those are the three.
Oh, I lost count. All of them are so
You're good.
good. They all blended each other. I'm like, I love all of those. Well, the whole part about you're one decision away from a totally different life. I used to say that, and so when I heard you say that the first time, I was really, I don't know, taken aback. I guess I've never heard anyone else say that, and I was like, okay, someone gets it. Good, because we do have so much more power than we think that we do, and I think women
Mhm.
especially they're afraid. It all comes down to this fear, like, oh, what will I ever do if I don't have my pension? Well, geez, if you lost it tomorrow, you'd figure it out. And we do hard stuff all the
Mhm.
time. And yet we talk to ourselves as if we can't handle the next hard thing. And I don't know, are we just too stressed to handle one more thing on our plates? And that's why we think that we can't make a change? Or why do you think that is?
It's the fear of the unknown.
Mhm.
You can be in an absolutely miserable place and you can acknowledge like I hate this life,
Yeah.
but you can also, and I reject that. Um, you can also say like take control and be like, well, I want to fix this. But it's easier to be like, no, this is okay. I'm going to justify it because it's predictable.
Mhm.
Because you know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know that you're going to go to work, you're going to get the same thing you've always gotten because you keep doing the same thing, and it's going to be predictable. And there's safety and predictability.
Mhm.
There's not safety in literally doing what I did and running, jumping off a cliff and being like, I can't take what I'm in anymore.
Yeah.
Like my back is against the wall. I had to jump and figure out how to fly on the way down.
Right.
But it's opened so many more doors for me. So many things I wanted that I couldn't have or didn't have. I don't want to say couldn't have. It wasn't going to work in the environment that I was in, the opportunities that I was looking for and what I wanted. And
Mhm.
I realized that. And that was part of my stress. It was like, well, I realized that I don't control my own opportunities within this department because of what's there and what I'm not able to fix, what I can't control.
Yeah.
So
And you were
it's
not
the
okay
fear of
with
the
that.
it's the fear of the unknown. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. It's hard to take control of your own circumstances, especially if you're not used to doing so. Um, for me, I was single for a long time. I didn't meet my husband until I was 35. And so, I kind of figured things out. I'm like, hey, if I don't like something happening in my life, I'm gonna change it. I don't do this whole like complain and complain and complain. I get so annoyed with my coworkers that show up every day and complain about, first of all, dumb stuff, but then also the same stuff. I'm like, you guys, if you hate it that much, change, do something else. And it's just not that the thing you're complaining about is such an easy fix. Sometimes I feel like for some people, I could step into their life and fix every problem I've ever heard them complain about in about half an hour. And so I really do believe that, yes, just you may have to be creative. It might not look exactly like you thought, but as soon as you start to pursue that change, you might find it's just so much closer than you thought it was, and maybe easier than you thought it was going to be. And you're right. If you leap, what the net appears. And it really does. And even if you crash and burn, the net kind of builds around you because you grow through that and you become closer to that person who is stronger and more capable that you're always meant to be.
Yeah. Growth doesn't happen from safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like if you never decided to get up and try to walk as a kid because you were afraid of falling down,
Hmm.
you would never learn how to walk.
Seriously. Yeah, definitely. So you don't just work with law enforcement though, do you? You're open to everybody?
No, so my business began as women in law enforcement. It has grown to female first responders and even expanded further this year to women in male driven fields,
Okay.
which of course encompasses all of that. But no, it's not just women in law enforcement. I realized this year that my message, especially from my book, that it will resonate with more, especially women in male driven fields who deal with a lot of the same issues that women in law enforcement do. And a lot of it is you're dealing with a bunch of men, you're trying to figure out that dynamic. You have other women who are trying to figure out their way as well, whether like, do I assemble to be with the guys and fit in with the guys? Do I stand up for the women? Are we competing against other women because there's so few of us and we feel like we're constantly in competition with other women when really we should be the ones banding together to help ourselves lift each other up? um, you can call it the good old boys system or whatever you want to input it in there, but it's a lot of the same, and it's the way that men treat women as well too. Unfortunately, I've seen threads that are scary bad of like people will post what's the most unhinged thing a coworker said to you in a male driven field, and it's just I'm like, I want to read 5 of these just to, like, validate my own issues, and then after that I have to like get rid of it because I'm like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
So horrible, the things that male coworkers feel like it's okay to say to another woman. I'm like, no. The most recent one I heard from another female law enforcement officer, she was pregnant and he made some joke about how she got pregnant. Like, did he have to hold you down or something like that? And I'm like, who
No,
says
that's a
that?
little too far.
Who says that? Like, why are we
uh,
talking this way? I don't understand. And so it's like those uncomfortable situations where you kind of, as a woman, you're a minority. And so you kind of like laugh it off because you're like, haha, I don't want to cause ruffles or waves and piss other people off. So I'm going to act like it's funny, but it's really not. It's slightly uncomfortable. And it's the nature of the beast a little bit, but there's ways that we all could do better. So
yeah.
I know for sure my story resonates with more,
Yeah.
especially reaching out to women in trades, women in tech, women in STEM, women in business, things like that.
Hmm. Yeah. And it really comes down to how we own our space, you know? I mean, I guess I could imagine kind of a far out scenario of a woman who like probably scared the crap out of this guy. Like he was terrified of her to then have to then feel like he should and could say something like that, which is super overcompensating and an insecure thing to say and rude and like all those things. Um, so how would a woman like that own her space to where that kind of comment is just not allowed in her reality? And he would know that and it just wouldn't be uttered. So how do we own our space in our own, I don't know, in our own power so that those kind of comments just don't touch us?
I think it depends on the person, the situation. There's probably tactful ways to respond, something to that. Of course, in the environment, it's tougher to stand up for yourself than like sit at home and be like, I'm going to drum up all these responses the next time this happens, type of
Yeah.
thing, after the fact. We always have our best comeback after the fact.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe something to the effect, maybe in that situation, be like, do you think that was really an appropriate thing to say? Like, just checking somebody on it, you
Yeah.
know? This same female, she makes me laugh, because of course she was pregnant, she had her baby, and she's gone back to work since. And so she's still pumping milk. And she was on shift one day and was like, "Hey, I need to go back to the station." Well, her partner started giving her shit of like, "Why are you going back to the station?" She's like, "I have to go pump breast milk." And like just the bluntness in which she said it, he was like, "Fine. I didn't want to know. Next time I won't
I'm so
friggin'
sorry
ask."
I asked. Yeah.
I was like, that's awesome. Do that more.
That's pretty good
Next time you need
payback.
something, be like, you have a tampon? No? Okay, fine.
Really, you sure it's an emergency? Just checking.
Is it appropriate for me to ask you, like, other bodily functions? I don't know. Insert the blank, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I do think that's a good comeback, though, when someone says something that's just so utterly inappropriate to respond with your own question that just points out how absurd it was that they could think that that was okay. And, we can't
Mhm.
control anyone else. We can only control ourselves. And so when something like that happens, just be able to look them in the face and be like, so does that normally work for you to talk to someone like that? You know,
Yeah. Well,
um,
I'm even guilty of it too, and actually, it's in the book. The person who I deem the slimy sergeant, who I'm sure that gives you an idea of what happened there.
mhm.
Um, he started getting inappropriate and hitting on me, and one day he sent me an explicit text, which I'll let the viewers, if they want to know, they can read it in the book. Completely uncalled for, out of the blue one day. And it was the same thing where I like laughed it off because I was like, this, like,
Yeah.
how do I respond to this? Like, you're a sergeant, I'm a female rookie. You're not my direct sergeant, but you're still supervision. So it's like I kind of laughed. And the funny thing is, I got so mad at that whole interaction after the fact that I deleted the text thread. Biggest mistake ever. Don't, if you get mad at a man, never delete the text thread. Oh my God.
I've done
For
that
anybody who
too.
needs that today,
Yeah,
for
seriously.
anybody who needs that today, never delete the text thread, no matter how mad you are. Um,
You're like, I don't want this
anyways,
toxicity even on my phone, but no, you have to keep it or screenshot it and put it somewhere else or something like that. You might
I
need
didn't
it.
want to see his name on my phone. That's why I got rid of it. Anyways, I digress. Um, he literally sent back the Homer Simpson gif of where he disappears into the bushes, like after he realized that the text was like a little too far. So it was awkward for a little while. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
I don't know where we go from this here, but yeah, it was awkward and uncalled for.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really had to set up some boundaries. And you were in quite a toxic environment, if I recall correctly from our previous conversations. And that's
Yeah.
pretty tough, when you feel like you're the only one and you don't have anyone who has your back and you're just you got passed over for promotions and put down and all of these things. It eventually made you feel like your back was against the wall. And so I just love that you, I don't know, reclaimed your power like so purposefully and took the leap, like you said. And what happened? Great things happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm shocked at what these things have turned into. I have my first keynote speech of the year next week in
Oh,
Manhattan,
nice.
Kansas for a
Congratulations. That's
women's.
great.
Thank you.
Nice.
It's a women's public safety, a luncheon that they're doing. Um, and I've got a couple other events going on this year as well that are for other law enforcement conferences or women in law enforcement conferences
Mhm.
and things like that. So that was always my dream. I wanted to go out to the training division. We've connected over firearms, obviously, but I wanted to be a firearms instructor. I went through firearms instructor school. I wanted to train the academy class. I wanted to be out in the training building that our department had, and the answer was always no. The funny thing is that slimy sergeant who initially was the part of the main reason why I left, because he's the one who targeted me and basically ran me out of there. He didn't run me out. I chose to leave. We'll take that back. Um, he was the main reason for that whole thing, but at the time he was being chummy, he actually stood up for me and got me into an active shooter instructor course. That
Okay.
was like the one good thing to my name. I have that credential, like that I am an active shooter instructor with LSU NCBRT, and I can still teach and train that stuff because I'm certified. And that was the one solid that stupid man did for me
Nice.
was
Yeah.
argue to get my name in that room for that course, because by walking into that course, there was no way in hell I was supposed to be in there. It was nothing but SWAT guys, because SWAT needs to know how to deal with an active shooter more than patrol not. And they were firearms instructors. It was, you were either a firearms instructor or you were SWAT, and then there was redheaded Monica. It's like I was the only female in a 30 to 40 person laser course, instructor course. I was like, hi, thanks for having me. I'm clearly not supposed to fit this mold in here in this room, but glad to be here.
Just own it.
Yeah, there's no way they were wanting to put me in there. But I think what had happened was is that there was another guy who wanted to be there, and they disliked him more than they disliked me. So they're like, okay, we'll let her in.
Sure. Oh man. Yeah, I feel like every shooter's course that I've taken, I'm always one of two women who are in the chorus, and I've always felt like super out of place. And it wasn't until I'd taken a bunch of them that I was like, okay, this is not only completely normal, but like all these guys who are in here, they're at the same level as me. And they really are. But, I look at a man, I'm like, you were probably born with a gun in your hand. What are you even doing here? And he's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It makes me feel better. Like, you have a right to be in the room. You really do.
The funny thing between my husband and I is actually we both went through firearms instructor school together. And in Oklahoma, the law enforcement course, it's they basically make it like precision shooting. It's timed a little bit, but it's mostly precision shooting. For instance, one of the courses is you have to shoot, I think it's 6 shots from prone at the 50-yard line with a pistol. Getting on the ground on your stomach with a pistol is not enjoyable in the least. It's not
50
comfortable.
yards is
Um,
so far for a pistol. Whoa.
yeah, that was part of it. But the funny thing is that my husband did grow up with a gun in his hand. He grew up competing in 3-gun competitions and is very well versed in firearms. Will pick one up, know exactly what make and model it is, like all those things. And I'm like looking at it going, it's a pew pew, it shoots. We're good. Give it to me, I can shoot it. Can't tell you much more about it than that, but I can hit the target, damn it.
Yeah.
But he would get so frustrated because three gun is much quicker and it's much less precision shooting. And so I would beat his score most days on the range on most qual courses. And so it became a funny joke that actually he's like, no, she shoots a little bit better than I do. It's like, thanks, honey. I'll own that one.
That's actually super common to have the women be more accurate than the men. I'm not sure what that is, but or why that is, but I swear it happens like all the time. Have you ever played any of the sandbox locations, the virtual reality places?
No, I've not
This is
heard
a
of
bit
that.
it's a bit of a side note, but we do a staycation every year, and so this year we decided to go up, and so we just like kind of enjoy the things in our area that we wouldn't normally do. And one of those
Hmm.
was to go up this place called the Sandbox, which is a virtual reality gaming place, and they have like 6 to 8 different games that you could select. And you get in there and you get all suited up with the sensors on your wrists and on your ankles. You wear the vest and you get the gun in your hands. And um, so we did one where it was just like a shoot 'em up kind of apocalyptic type of scenario, and it was super fun. Anybody can do it. Like, I definitely recommend, especially if you got teenage boys, or even our kids are 11 and 13, so it's perfect. But we get the results at the end, and I'm like the worst of everybody except my accuracy.
Yes.
I beat everybody with accuracy. I just didn't have as many kills, let's say.
There
It's
you
kind of weird.
go.
Yeah. Well, let's still go ahead and jump into a couple of questions. What do you recommend as general guidelines for someone who wants to prioritize her health but is short on time? So I assume like diet, exercise, sleep, things like that. What do you think?
Yeah. Um, First thing being, you have to make time to implement the habits that will produce the lifestyle that you want. That takes time because it's very challenging to overhaul lifestyle habits. It's like telling yourself to brush your teeth with your right hand in the morning. Like that would take some, well, I'm left handed. So
I was
flop
gonna say I
that
do
for
that all the
normal
time. What do you
people.
mean?
Flop that for non left handed people.
Yeah.
Switching hands to brush your teeth essentially, like you have to remind yourself until you got in the habit of doing it. So it's similar to things when you're trying to change lifestyle habits. Um, so I start with that caveat. You do have the time, you have to make the time. Um, but there are challenges with time restraints and things in life. Honestly, for me, the first thing it goes back to sleep, believe it or not. Prioritizing your sleep, getting to 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. That's like the first thing. I usually go into detail with helping people with nutrition first when they come to me in a coaching program, just because that's the bigger beast to get started on. But really, you don't realize like how much your life could improve just by getting the right amount of sleep.
Mhm.
And making sure your time around sleep is there where it's like non-negotiable. I'm in bed for 7 to 9 hours a night. Obviously, it's you got to do the best you can sometimes depending on what your situation is.
Definitely. That's
Um,
interesting because I had to train my husband to go to bed. When I first met him, I was like, nope, bedtime's 9:30, 10 o'clock latest. Like, I don't want to be. I was reading somewhere, I forgot where, but like apparently for every hour before midnight that you go to bed equates to an extra 2 hours of recovery that your body gets. I believe that based on my own experience. I don't know if it's actually true, but I've noticed a huge increase in my focus and my performance and just steady energy levels throughout the day by going to bed a couple of hours before midnight. And if you'd asked him at the time, like, oh, when should you go to bed? He could tell you, you know, he's not going to say 12:30, 1 o'clock when he normally was going to bed. He would say like, oh, probably 10, 9 to 10. But
Mm-hmm.
he wouldn't do it until I was like, no, this is how we do it. This, you have to be in bed at this time. And finally, now that he has made that a habit, he can't go back now. He like has to be in bed at that time, or else if there's plans, too bad, we're not going.
Yeah, yeah, that's the big one people don't think about. I'm not sure. I mean, that the way you stated that fact, it tracks because I've always been told that your most restorative sleep happens between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m.
Interesting.
So that somewhat tracks with that,
Yeah.
as far as getting in bed at like 10 or before.
Right.
So yeah, the sleep is the big thing. As far as some time saving tips for nutrition, use a crock pot. Crock
Oh
pot
yeah.
is like my biggest hack for meal prep. Crock pot or instant pot. Skinnytaste.com. I'm not even affiliated with this person. I just love her website. She has all sorts of recipes that are healthy recipes that you can search by protein, you can search by cooking method, whatever it is to find something easy. I love wintertime because crock pot soups are like dump and cook. Like it's so simple. Even throughout the year, like a crock pot chicken, throw in a handful of chicken breasts into a crock pot with some chicken stock or broth, let
Absolutely.
it sit for 5 or 6 hours and shred it, drain it, shred it, add your spices, and you have a giant bowl of chicken for the week. So using your crock pot, you can lean into like microwavable vegetables, whether they're canned or frozen. Those cut out on time because cutting and baking vegetables can be time consuming.
Yeah.
If that's something that you like doing. Um, and then I suggest also boiling potatoes or rice, potatoes, pasta, or rice. So that way you have your protein set out, you have your carbohydrate set out, and then you have your veggies, and you can intermix those throughout the week. And boiling rice or pasta or potatoes only takes 20 minutes. Then you got to cook your protein so you can do the crock pot thing. And then the last piece is throwing a veggie in there.
Well,
Um,
that's
and
really
where I,
handy using the crock pot, just because you don't have to be a skilled chef to be able to use these tools. It's so easy, anyone can do it, and it gets you ahead of the game for several days in a row.
Right. And the reason I break it down like that, just to give some context, I teach what I call my balance plate template, which essentially means your goal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is getting about a quarter plate of your cooked protein, about a quarter plate of your starchy carbs, which is the rice, potatoes, or pasta, and then about half a plate of vegetables. So every time I meal prep, I look at those three things. Do I have a veggie? Do I have a carb? Do I have a protein? Assemble it on the plate. You can mix and match throughout the week. You're good to go.
I think it also depends on, at least from my own experience, it depends on what you are doing throughout your day. So if you have a very sedentary job, very sedentary lifestyle, or your day just that day involves a lot of sitting for whatever reason, that's probably not the best day to have 2.5 cups of rice for the day. Your body's not going to use that. And so, fuel for the task at hand has been very useful for me while I'm trying to keep myself in good shape. And, I'm a dispatcher, so I sit a lot of the time. And then, I work from home a lot of time, also sitting. And so, my exercise winds up being my outlet. And the other activities that I have, they're kind of few and far between. And so I have to be careful where I'm loading up all these carbs, and for the most part, keeping it high protein. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, people sometimes get into the weeds because of carbohydrates and the media and kind of how they portray all carbs as bad. When really you already mentioned it, the bigger issue is getting your protein. If you can get in about it's zero point 0.7 grams per pound of body weight, roughly. So easy math. If you're a 100-pound person, you need 70 grams of protein.
Yep.
You can figure out the math based on what you weigh. Most people, especially women, barely get 100 grams of protein, which is
Oh
very
yeah,
minimal.
barely.
Everybody should get at least 100 grams of protein. Probably most people at least 125 grams of protein. If you focus on that protein, you're going to be fuller longer, and you're not going to be reaching towards some of those other snacks or trying to fill up on those carbohydrates because that's what we tend to fill up on, right? Because nobody's overfilling up on veggies most of the time. Um, so if you can prioritize the protein, that's the first thing to focus on. If that's the one thing I would tell people to focus on, it would be getting in that protein target because that's going to naturally help you curb some of those other issues that you think you might have that really aren't the real issue at hand.
Hmm. That leads me into this other one that's really good. What do you recommend for someone who consistently has a post lunch slump in energy?
Getting in 30 grams of protein at breakfast.
Hmm.
If you get at least or first meal of the day, depending on if you're a shift worker, getting in 30 grams of protein in your breakfast is going to help with that energy level, especially throughout the morning. And that's how I would start. You're going to need a decent amount of protein in your lunch as well. But if you're missing breakfast, even with a good lunch, your energy levels probably aren't going to be where you want them still, because by your second meal of the day, you're still not getting enough fuel. So typically what I see is if you can get yourself started with a good breakfast and at least get 30 grams of protein in breakfast, it's like a downhill effect for the rest of the day. Your energy is better. You don't hit the slumps. You're not reaching for the snacks. You're more mentally clear and you're more likely to make better food choices throughout the day too.
I completely agree. Yeah, and that's really how you're going to hit that protein requirement as well. And zero point 0.7
Mm.
grams of protein per pound of body weight is minimum from what I know. That's the
Yes.
minimum you
Yes.
should ever get in any day. And so if I know the if I know how most things go, minimum means the worst. So I'm not going to go with minimum anything, oh, well, minimum vitamin D levels is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, so that means still bad. You want to be up towards the higher end if you can. But yeah, I've noticed a lot with a slump after lunch, it has to do with your sugar crashing. And so starting with high protein early in the day definitely helps as far as consistent energy levels throughout. But when you go to eat that second meal, if it's pure pasta salad, you're going to crash after that. You're going to need a coffee. You're going to need something. You're also going to want some sugar probably because you can be really thirsty. And so that kind of a imbalance is why you're crashing. Protein digests slower. And so you don't have that drop off as much. So yeah, if you're someone like me who's sitting a lot, then take care of that energy level, and you can do that with food.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Um, and yes, ideally for protein, your goal is 1 gram per pound of body weight, but I don't typically say that as far as like a public setting anymore because the zero point 0.7 is usually a big jump for most people to start if
Totally.
they're not already in that world.
Yeah.
So that's why I just throw out the zero point 0.7 because it's easy to remember and easy to be like, oh, like here's my first like look in the mirror reflection type thing of I need 125 grams of protein. I'm getting 80. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I have a big gap. So because even when I usually give my clients some sort of target. It's not like hit or miss. It's more of a range as far as what you should hit for your protein and your overall calories. And I don't even base their protein off of that zero point 0.7 most of the time because they're so low that usually like say if they're getting 75 grams of protein, I'll say, hey, let's shoot for 100 this week.
Yeah.
So like I'll baby step them up to help them increase because that's where a lot of people fail too is they get into these like trackers or whatever saying, well, I need to hit 150 grams of protein and 2000 calories and I'm starting from 1500 calories and like 80 grams of protein and they try to do it all at once and then it's
Right.
not sustainable because they're like, oh my god, this is too much food, I can't do this. So a lot of what I do on the coaching side of thing is baby stepping people up to where they'll end up where they need to be, but it could take 2 to 3 months to get there depending on how big that gap is for them.
Yeah, definitely. And it's discouraging if you can't hit it when your coach is like, you need to hit it. Yeah, and also you'll be used to eating a certain number of other macronutrients, and so you'll feel like it's impossible. I remember when I first started focusing on protein. Full disclosure, I was raised vegetarian. Worst move ever for me personally. I know it works for a lot of people. That was not good for me. There's a reason I was such a little shit. Like my blood sugar was all over the place. I could not stay steady. I couldn't focus, and it turned out I really needed more protein. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
all that to say that yeah, we want to be fueling for the task at hand, right?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, how about what do you recommend women do for exercise when she hits the gym specifically? Like, is it cardio every day, machines, free weights, classes? That's a good question.
So the very basics of where I start off is saying you need to get in some movement 30 minutes 3 times a week, whatever that looks like. And for most people, if you're not used to doing anything, I say, hey, get out and go walk. Start walking 30 minutes 3 times a week. Or it could be some low intensity, quote unquote, cardio. I don't really even call it cardio. Whether you're on a bike or a treadmill or a machine, that's something like low intensity, 30 minutes 30 times a week. From there, if you're going to get in the gym, it depends on what your goals are. The most effective method for fat loss is resistance training. So you have to lift weights. If you want to lose fat, you want to get stronger, you got to lift some weights. You can't just do cardio and think that you're going to get toned and strong and all the things. From the walking, I say add in some body weight movements. Maybe you get outside and you're going to jog. Tell yourself, hey, all right, I'm going to jog for a minute and I'm going to do 30 seconds of air squats. Then I'm going to jog for another minute and I'm going to do 30 seconds of push-ups. Or you can insert whatever body weight movement in there. You can set your time domain. Say, hey, I want to work for 15 minutes. And then you can figure out how many rounds of whatever you're doing you need to do. After that's when probably you need to start grabbing some weights, either at home or getting into the gym, working into squatting, pressing overhead, or bench pressing, deadlifts, things like that, because those compound lifts are going to be most effective for you and your job and what you do. Because especially the women who I serve that are women in male-driven fields, it's a lot of active women, especially first responders. So when we're thinking first responders, you got to pick up and move heavy people and equipment. You got to be able to do a short sprint if you're going to chase somebody. I always joke with the fire and EMS people, God bless y'all carrying a stretcher up like apartment stairs, like hail to the no. Like I would die. I would die even doing that. And they're like, oh my God, I know it sucks. And then you're like at the top of the stairs, trying not to be the person that's like, like, I'm good. I'm good. I hope you don't hear me breathing too heavy, or they're like breathing in the radio super hard. You're like, you can't hear shit because they're breathing too hard. But it's stuff like that. I think it's your goals of what you're working towards. If you're working towards more of like job effectiveness, that's how I program for my people, of making sure we're doing deadlifts, we're doing squats, because picking up a stretcher is a deadlift, and different things like that, so that it's more applicable to what you're doing. So I would say get in the gym, get some lifting in, and then depending on what your goal is, if it's first responder based or output based, make sure you're getting in some cardio, some sort of aerobic fitness, because again, that's what your job mandates. It just depends on the person. It's like, I give the example, there's a guy that I know through social media who's a recruiting officer for another agency in our state. Dude is massive. Like, he's in the gym all the time. He's just a big old boy, like ripped, shredded, like squats 800 pounds. I don't know, like giant dude. And the example that I give, and they're like, well, I'm going to bodybuild, I'm not going to do cardio. Okay, great, bro. You can sit on somebody and put them in handcuffs and they're fine.
Yeah.
That works for you. That don't work for me. Because I'm 5'3" and all of 160 pounds. I can't do that. So again, it depends on the purpose. Like, person, I'm going to need more cardio and a little bit more strength to take care of the same person that big old boy is just going to sit on and be like, put your hands behind your back because I'm about to crush you. Type of thing.
Yeah, well, let's get really specific here. So if you were to tell someone how to train for survival, their best chances of survival, what kinds of exercises come to mind? What type of training should she be doing in order to help herself out and stack the cards in her favor?
Yeah, so my brain goes towards functional fitness. That's my background. Not to say that anything else doesn't work or anything's better than the other, because it also has to be something that you enjoy. Because if it's something you enjoy, it's something you'll stick with. It's not like saying, hey, go do bodybuilding and you hate it and then you never go to the gym type of thing, for an example. So functional fitness, getting in your major compound lifts, squat, deadlift, press, be able to move large loads over a distance, and then also the cardio piece to it. Make sure you can run. Make sure if you're going to have to sprint maybe 100 yards, that you can sprint 100 yards. It's just the basics of health and fitness and lifestyle, really. If you want to be more fit, you want to be more of a runner, that's fine. Go make sure you can run a sub 10-minute mile, maybe. It depends on, again, it's kind of looking at what you want to be able to do. But as far as like a responsive person who can defend themselves, I'd say you cover most bases that way. If you're strong, you have your major lifts, and then also you have enough aerobic capacity that's going to, at least, I would say probably sub 5 minutes would probably be most fights. If you're going to get into like a fight with somebody, hand to hand or gunfight, make sure that you can perform at high intensity for short bursts of energy.
Which 5 minutes is an eternity if you're fighting for your life. 1 minute
Oh,
is
yeah.
an eternity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess what comes to mind for me would be like stuff in everyday life. if you have to, like I said, run away, or if you have to climb over a fence to get away from somebody, um, if you have to, I don't know, think of any other ways that you might need to defend yourself to escape or to be able to leverage your own body weight against somebody else to make your getaway. Think about those kinds of things. And so for me, I really like what you said, the compound lifts, the deadlifts, pull-ups, if you can work your way up to pull-ups, in case you got to pull yourself up over something, right? If you have to lift your kid and put them over something, um, overhead presses, full body movements, and a lot of core as well. If your core is strong,
Mhm.
you can do a lot more than you normally would, right? Kettlebells are super effective. And then I really like free weights just because then you are relying on your core to sustain you versus the machines.
Mhm.
They can be helpful for actually putting on muscle, keeps you in the range of motion. It can be good for if you have injuries, let's say, but it doesn't make you stabilize yourself. And so I'm all for making sure that the lifts that I do also translate to the real world. um, as far as like being a better shooter, we've got some of these ladies who are going through these courses that are tactical, where they have them running from place to place and maybe getting down on the ground, taking some shots, holding a gun for a long period of time. What do you recommend for something like that?
Again, I think it's looking at your goals and reverse engineering it, just kind of like what you said. That's how my brain works as well, especially when I get somebody, a more specific example of like a firefighter or a police officer that says like, here's my fitness test, here's what I have to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll reverse engineer a program to fit those tests. So same thing here. If you're moving and shooting, and there's more fitness aspect to it, I would apply that to the gym. Um, with tactical type stuff, I would say, like you already brought up kettlebells. Maybe you work into more of a cardio thing where you get your heart rate up. Maybe that's like an assault bike sprint or a rowing sprint or ski erg, and then odd object type stuff. So kettlebells, sandbags, wheelbarrows, stuff like that. Maybe even wearing a weighted vest, because it's more real world applicable instead of being like, okay, I'm gonna load up a barbell and do a back squat. Well, that's applicable to your leg strength, but not necessarily applicable to this test.
Yeah.
So though, although it's applicable, you still need to train for the event itself. So that's where I would say start thinking outside the box a little bit more as far as what it is you're training for. Keep the core pieces. You need to keep the core strength pieces. You need to keep the core cardio pieces, but then every once in a while throw in something different, like you do an odd object type thing where maybe you do like a assault bike sprint for 30 seconds, you hop off, you do a farmer's carry, like 100-foot farmer's carry down and back, and then you get back on your bike
Mm-hmm.
and roll again.
Is that the kind of workout that you should do every time, or should you switch it up?
I would say maybe if you're working off of a 5-day workout program, I would maybe do that twice a week,
Mm-hmm.
something like that, once to twice a week. I mean, I can compare it to myself. I've been training for some of those things myself as well, um, and I've been working in like more rope climbs because that's something some of those more tactical games type events do and stuff that I know that I need to work on. So it's taking whatever weakness you need to improve and maybe throwing that in once or twice a week, so that you're keeping your core stuff in there, but you're also adding in that specialty type stuff here and there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've noticed like when you go through a tactical course, and a lot of women they have a hard time, especially like with the rifles, where you're holding it up here and you're having to hold it there for a long period of time. And they can't do it because their shoulders wear out. And so, like you
Mhm.
said, reverse engineering it makes a whole lot of sense. Like, what kind of movements are you going to need to do to accomplish your goal? And so, if you need to strengthen your shoulders, how do we do that? From raises, overhead presses, push ups, all those things that target up here.
Mhm.
That's going to help with that. And same with the sprints and the skaters moving side to side. So you have good lateral movement, stability. Um, yeah. And then being able to, get up off the ground quickly and go back down. So like I think about Turkish get ups, which if you don't know what those are,
Mhm.
where you like lay down and you put one hand on the ground and you like slip in. I think it breaks it down into like 5 different movements of going from prone all the way up to standing and then vice versa with the weight in your hands. I feel like that's a really
Yep.
good way to approach training, for something so specific, right?
Yep.
What about let's see. Yeah, so while our primary demographic are women over 40, should someone like her be training differently than a woman in her 20s?
The short answer is yes. The application is a little bit varied. Um, I think for anybody of any age, the basics are the same. You still need to eat whole foods. You still need to make sure you're not eating processed foods. The other side of that, focusing on whole foods. You need to make sure you're getting in 3 meals a day. You're getting in your protein, all the things that we just got done talking about. You need to make sure you're getting your 7 to 9 hours of sleep. You need to make sure you're getting in your self care, which is your mental health care, walking, journaling, reading, meditating, all the things. Um, when it comes to the gym, the main difference I see as women start to age is that because of hormone fluctuations, you want to make sure that you're not going too heavy, too hard, and too long into cardio because that can stress your body out even further, which affects hormones, it affects recovery, all of those things. Um, the one most recommended thing is still the strength training. So even for me, I'll be 35 this year. I've even scaled back a little bit on the cardio and made it a little bit shorter because my body is recovering from the chronic stress and toxic work environment, which was, by the way, 3 years ago. Still recovering. But for anybody else who's in a stressful environment, I mean, it's not secluded to um, just law enforcement. It's work or it's at home or anything, any other outside stressors, um, being cognizant of how much you're pushing in the gym versus your recovery because even your workout is a stress even though it's a positive stressor, it's still adding to that stress bucket. So if you're going to dial back workouts or you feel like your body's not recovering or you're feeling more sluggish, I would start to pull back the cardio a little bit, keep the strength training there and see how your body does. But as you get older, again, goal dependent, if you're a 40-year-old female and you're wanting to compete, um, your needs are going to be different. I would still pull in that cardio and see how your body does with the recovery. But if it gets to the point where you're not recovering well, you're feeling sluggish, you're getting some of the brain fog, you're always hungry and irritable, that's where I would assess what needs to change. Do I need to pull back on the cardio? Maybe is it train smarter, not harder type of thing? Being more effective with what you're doing versus just going more and more and more, because some people get into that trap, especially if you're in the CrossFit world, which is where I come from. And I've kind of gone to both ends of the spectrum of that, of going like too far off the deep end to like coming back. And finally, I think I found my happy medium with it. So there's a couple different factors in there. Short answer would be yes. But as we age, it all depends on lifestyle factors. It depends on your overall health, depends on what your goals are, all of those good things.
So what I'm hearing is it's an individual pursuit.
Pretty much. I mean, I do my best to give generic answers to fit the bigger audience. But yeah, it helps just to, I think it goes back to listening to your body too, and what your recovery is and just how things feel week to week. If you're wanting to stay active and just kind of be like, well, not really training for it, but I want to be fit enough to hop in on a competition whenever I feel like it. I mean, that's kind of one of my goals too, if I'm being honest. It's just a day-to-day, week-to-week thing, really, of am I being consistent with what I'm doing? Because that's the first thing, is just the consistency of it. And then you get into the weeds of, well, do I need to tweak my tweak it to fit. I sound like Tweety Bird. Jeez. To make it fit what you're doing, or pull back if you're feeling some negative side effects of it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hearing that from a lot of experts in the field. I love YouTube. I probably listen to something on YouTube like every day, but half of it is going to be fitness stuff. I love it, and they're all saying the same kinds of things. Listen to your body, be specific, and be consistent with what you're doing. And we're all looking for the next best way to do it. I think a lot of people continue to look for the best way to do it as kind of an excuse for why they're not doing what they already know they need to do. I'll never forget this lady that I trained years ago at the gym I worked at. She's in good shape, but she just looked the same. Excuse me, for like I trained her for several years, and she just kind of looked the same. And I was like having all these doubts in my head, just like, oh man, am I not doing this right for her? I want to like help her get where she really wants to go. And then one day she shows up and she looked slamming. I was like, oh my god, Megan, you look amazing. What have you been doing? And she's like, oh, well, I just started doing what you said to do. I was like, I've been having all these doubts. I'm like, oh, okay. So she just wasn't following instructions. Got it. Like I learned an important lesson there.
Yeah, I mean, it's I give grace and patience to my people for sure, but sometimes I just don't understand when I'm giving them guidance and they're coming back at me with questions of for most women, it's the fear of like having to restrict food, right? And
Mhm.
so they'll come back to me and be like, "Well, I'm only eating this," or um, "I'm trying to do what my wife is doing, or my partner or spouse, or insert the blank, is doing, so then it's easier for both of us to do this. But somebody else gave them a meal plan, so I'm going to do what they're doing." And I'm like, "Okay, like wouldn't 100% advise, but
Right.
I like the accountability and support, being on the same page, so I support that side of it." And then they end up eating like half of what I've told them to eat. I'm like, "Meal plan works. Let's add in a little bit of things to get you to where you need to be." And she's like, "I don't know. I felt like I needed to cut this in half because they told so and so it's supposed to be for weight gain." And I'm like, "This is a 1400 calorie plan. This is not weight gain for nobody."
Right.
Um, so it's I understand that where you're like, "I've been giving you guidance and you're still trying to go off in your own little path a little bit. I gotta try to like rein you back in." Like,
Yeah.
"You're welcome to try that. I wouldn't advise it, but if we're gonna do that, I'm gonna try to tweak it with X, Y, and Z, and then see if we can find some middle ground of
Yeah.
where all this is going, I guess."
And that's where it's hard to be really direct with someone, be like, okay, you can do that, but it won't accomplish the thing you just said you wanted to do. And so if you really
Yeah.
want that, then we got to rethink what you're doing. I understand the reasons, but I'm just telling you, I've got your back, but we're not going to get there this way. But women
Mhm.
also, we've been taught not to eat. We've been told not to eat our whole lives. Like we're supposed to be Barbie. We're supposed to be these teeny tiny emaciated things. And it just hasn't been a service to women. Like we should be eating, and we should be eating the right foods. I don't just mean like eat everything, of course not, but eat the right foods. And it's adding more into your diet, adding what additional things can I eat. And if you're hitting those marks of the additional things you're going to eat, you don't even have room. You're not hungry. You can't possibly fit the extra things that you were eating before, and you're able to hit all your goals that way.
Yeah. In 3 little over 3 years now, I've coached about 200 women, and of them, I've only had 1 come to me who's overeating.
Ah, really?
They all came to me severely undereating. And the female who was overeating, it was because she was eating out a lot. So it
Okay.
wasn't actually a high amount of volume of food, but it was calorie dense fast food
Right.
that we had to reroute her on.
Mhm.
So most granted, I'm working with a certain niche of women, so I don't know if this fits all women. Um, but that 99% of them, and I still stick to this, will come to me under eating. And the funny thing is that when I talk about this in front of a room with men and women, the guys will nod too and be like, "Yep, I'm not eating enough either because I eat 1 meal a day." And I'm like, "This fits you too, bud. You're not
Right.
eating enough."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, and while we're talking about this topic as well, when it comes to survival, training for survival, we have to eat for survival as well. And so
Mhm.
if you don't have any breakfast and then you forgot to eat at whatever time and you're dehydrated and then you get attacked in the parking lot, adrenaline only takes you so far, and you're just again not stacking the cards in your favor by not eating and fueling your body the way it should. And so yeah, it all comes down to the same things, right? Taking care of your health, taking care of your body, so that you can live that free life and you can defend yourself if you should ever need to.
Yeah, and I think it takes reframing things of figuring out what type of person you want to be, what characteristics of that person you want to be, because you can sit there and say, "Okay, I want to be the type of person who is ever ready, can defend myself at any time I need to." What habits does that person who is ever ready need to be able to do? Okay,
Definitely.
well, I'm the type of person who's ever ready, so if I'm telling myself in my brain that, then I'm the type of person who needs to eat breakfast. I'm the type of person that needs to go to the gym 3 times a week. Once you have that identity or goals, if you will, in your brain of what person you want to be, it's a lot easier to make those decisions of what decisions I need to do to step into that identity of that person.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right, awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap this up?
Don't think so. I think just that last point's probably my biggest point. As far as framing things, it's not like, well, I know I need to go to the gym 3 times a week. Well, why? You're just telling yourself it's good to go to the gym 3 times a week instead of saying like, well, this is the person I want to be. And then it becomes, because people will say, I don't have the motivation, I don't have the discipline, whatever. Um, you're lacking direction and you're lacking a plan most of the time when you're lost in that cycle. So I think it goes back to, again, that principle of what does it mean to you to thrive? What type of person do you want to be? What do you want your life to be?
Right.
Um, if being a female patriot or being a woman who can defend yourself and not rely on a man or somebody else to defend you, then you have to figure out what that vision in your head looks like and then what steps you need to take to step into that vision.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, purpose is a big thing, especially for women, especially or if you've had a period of your time in your life when you were a stay-at-home mom. It can leave you directionless when kids leave the nest, or even when you're just in a job that you don't really like, but you don't really have a purpose, and so you're just kind of making do and making your way through life, but it doesn't feel full. And so, yeah, how do you want to show up
Mhm.
in the world? How do you want to own your space? What kind of person you want to be?
Yep.
Awesome. I think that's a great stopping point. Yeah, for those of you who are watching, don't miss our Fit to Fight tactical talk. It's coming up on July, coming up. It always feels like it's coming up because time passes so fast. But July 14th is when our next tactical talk is going to be. And we will continue to do these discussions as well, in which you can participate in the chat. So we'll get that next one scheduled out as soon as we can, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for coming.